Welcome back to the Closing Time Podcast. This is episode number 14. I am Brian Prawl, and we have
Travis Blayton.
And we're going to get right into it because if you pay attention, or if you're in the market for a house, or if you're a homeowner, you're going to start seeing headlines, if you haven't already, about rates being the lowest they've been in 3 years, and rates are under 6% for the first time in since COVID, essentially. So we're getting a lot of conversations that we're having with clients, with real estate agents, with people that either are homeowners or are looking to get into the market about that and what it means for them. And a lot of the conversations are about people that we helped buy houses over the last couple of years that had rates maybe in the 7s, sometimes even closer to 8, sometimes in the upper 6s. And we're starting to see that trend come into play where we're seeing a 5 in front of a lot of the rates that we're quoting at this point.
Yep.
So let's talk about that. And let's talk about some conversations that we're having and how people can use the headlines to their advantage.
Yeah, I want to pivot real quick before we jump into the refinance stuff. Let's have a quick, brief conversation on how this impacts people buying houses, right? Because as rates decline, there's going to be more buyers entering the market, more competition for listings. So when you're going to make offers, it could drive the sales price up a little bit.
And it will do that for sure.
And so being prepared on that, I think, is a strategy that that real estate agents in particular need to be cognizant of, is having the right strategy when they're making an offer, and working with a loan officer and team that is going to help them deliver that strategy to the listing agent that gets delivered to the seller to have those offers accepted. I think it's a very important thing. I know we've always made a phone call to the listing agent. That's something we've done for years that has always separated us from other
Let's talk
lenders.
about that real quick, because I think some of our listeners might not understand why that's a value add or what that means. So talk through what your plan is, or what your strategy is.
So myself and our team, and I think your team does as well, we do actual pre-approvals. So there's pre-qualifications, which are you fill out an online application, you give me some information over the phone, I do a soft pull on credit, I have no documents, I've not verified anything that you've told me, I write a pre-qualification letter. Pre-qualification letters are garbage in a competitive market environment. We do full pre-approvals, which means you apply with us, we're going to verify income, assets, anything on the credit to issue that pre-approval letter. And that allows us to make a phone call to the listing agent that we have verified with documentation, income, assets, credit, and that we have a very strong individual who's making an offer on a house. You can also take that a step forward with our fast track program that we both have and use from time to time, where we can actually have underwriting go ahead and underwrite income, asset, and credit. And it's almost like a same as cash offer, right? Because you can, in a competitive market situation, we did it some during COVID years, let's move the financing contingency. Like, we can remove that out of our contract here in the state, and it then becomes like cash offer.
And so this is important for anybody that's missing that point. It's important because what you're going to see, and what I've already seen with 5 or 6 clients making offers in the last week or two, multiple offer situations.
Yep.
So when Travis or myself or any loan officer proactively makes a phone call to the agent that is selling the house and explains to them, we've done all this work on your file, what it indicates to them, and they can relay to their seller, is this lender called me. They've already verified everything that could go wrong with the borrower on the borrower side. So your offer becomes stronger because the seller can feel more comfortable in the fact that there's going to be no issues with the buyer. That doesn't cover property issues, like if they get a bad
Right.
inspection or if the appraisal comes in low or title's not clear.
But there's contingencies in the contract for
Correct.
that. Yeah.
So where this helps our clients and our agents is you're going to get your offers accepted at a higher rate than any other people that aren't doing that work on the front end. And so you as a client have a higher chance of buying the house that is your dream house because you're working with Travis or you're working with me or somebody that does that activity, right?
Yeah.
So our clients are winning in multiple offer situations more than other clients.
That's right. And I'm not giving, my clients financial information out, right? But I can have a conversation with the leasing agent about the work I've done to verify the validity of their financial situation. I've had in the past where a seller wants to call and have a conversation, and that I've had that happen 3-4 times. And in that case, I call my client and say, "Hey, the seller wants to ask me questions. What can I talk about? What can I not talk about?" And in all of those situations where the seller's called, I've won every single time.
And not even necessarily if they're the highest priced offer.
Yep,
Like
absolutely.
the seller is looking at it as like, okay, I might get $5,000 from this other buyer, but there's a 50% chance of it closing where I've got a 100% chance of this closing. Even if I'm taking a little bit less money, I feel safer closing in this situation with Travis as the lender.
Oh yeah, and during the COVID years, like I put guarantees on it. Like I mean, I've done that before. There and certainly in the COVID years, I had borrowers who were financing the home win over cash offers, and that's a big deal. And so, last thing I would say on that, if you are a listing agent going into the market that we're in now, and moving to, if you are not calling or hearing from the loan officer from a buyer, you should be making that phone call. Whatever number is on the pre-approval letter, because everybody sends out pre-approval letters that are not pre-approval letters, you should kind of develop 2 or 3 questions to ask when you make that phone call. Have you verified? Do you have documents in house? Which documents do you have? Not what the documents say. Do you have pay stubs? Do you have W-2? Oh, it's a self-employed borrower. Have you gotten tax returns and analyzed them yet? To represent your sellers appropriately in the offers that you're presenting to them. Hey, I've got 3 offers. This is a cash. This one's gone through some sort of underwriting, pre-approval, same as cash offer. This is a pre-qual. Like they need to understand the difference and what that means for them as well. But I just thought we should have that conversation on how decreasing interest rates will impact the buyer market. So we can move towards the refinance conversations now.
I love that pivot because it makes a lot of sense. And most lenders, and specifically us, the greatest proportion of our business is purchase business anyway. Like we're going to do some refinances for clients that we've helped over the last few years. But our focus is on people buying houses, and that's what we enjoy. That's what we do the most of. So it was a good pivot, and I'm glad you did it. And I think it's an important concept because we still have people that are saying, I'm going to wait until rates drop. And so when you run the math on that, like there's been reporting that for every 1% decline in interest rates, you see an additional 5% in home value appreciation.
Yep.
So on your $400,000 house, you just paid an extra 20 grand for the house to save a little bit on the interest. Like, where's the break even on that? Did you actually save any money? Maybe, maybe not. But at the very least, you lost out on 20 grand in home equity for what, a $75 difference in your payment. Like, I don't think there's a financial advisor in the world, including Pat, who was just here with us recording an episode. Like, I don't think he would say, take $50 and give up 20 grand.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, so it ends up being a poor financial decision a lot of times. And maybe the time isn't right for somebody to buy a house and they're going to benefit from a lower rate down the road. But if you're in the market and your decision is to wait to see if rates come down a little bit, usually ends up not working out in their favor.
Yeah. And at least call a loan officer and have that conversation. Let's run through the numbers of the cost of waiting. Does it make sense? To make sure what you're thinking is what the numbers actually bear out. And again, to plug local lenders this time, that's the reason why you want to call a local lender, because they can oftentimes have that conversation with you, where a big box online lender, you're calling into a call center, they couldn't figure out the cost of waiting if they tried. Um, so you, shameless plug, I guess, for local lenders. But so talk to us about what or how you determine if choosing to do a refinance makes sense. What does that conversation look like?
It's very, very buyer or individual client specific, but what we're noticing in a lot of the conversations that we're having, or at least that I'm having now, is, hey, Brian, I bought this house a year and a half ago. My rate's 7.25. I saw a headline that rates are in the fives. Does it make sense? And so what we always do is just, let's run the numbers and see. I don't know if it makes sense or not. If the mortgage that you have on that house is $100,000 and you're going to save a point in rate, but you're going to have to spend $3 or $4 grand to do it, I don't know that it makes sense. It may not. But if your loan is $500,000 and you're going to save a half a point in rent and you're going to save $300 a month, then yeah, it might make sense to bear the cost of a refinance. And so it's individual specific. There are certain loan programs and loan products that seem to tend to make it easier to refinance. Specifically a VA loan. Like if you had served the country in the military and you bought a house using your VA, they offer a streamlined refinance that is really easy. No appraisal. Yeah. We don't have to pull credit. We don't have to get any documentation. It's just, thank you for serving our country. Here's a lower rate.
Yep.
Sign a couple forms. And so it's a great, great opportunity. And then you can get a little bit more in depth in that conversation and say, okay, you could pay a little bit of more money and get your rate down even lower. But does that make sense? Let's run the numbers. Let's see where the break-even point is. And so what we look at is, and this is true for any refinance, like how much are you saving and how much does it cost? And then you divide those two numbers out and then you come up with a break-even point. A lot of times that break-even point will be 7 months. A lot of times it'll be 10 years. We typically aren't going to recommend a refinance for somebody who's going to break even in 10 years because who knows what's going to happen.
Right.
But if you're going to break even on a loan in less than a couple of years, I don't see any reason not to pull the trigger on that if you're going to be in the house. Right, it starts
to make sense, yeah.
Right. And so, yeah, we run those numbers. I mean, we're running a lot of them for any client that we've helped. We're proactively reaching out saying, hey, you have an opportunity. And then that leads to the question of, well, our rate's going to go down even further. And do you know the answer to that question?
I mean, I don't. I don't have a crystal ball. If I knew the answer to that question, I would not need to be a loan officer anymore.
Correct. We would be on our island somewhere. So then it becomes a fun conversation of, okay, let's see what makes sense here, because you're going to potentially wait another year for rates to drop a point further, for a random example. Okay, well, does that make sense? Because right now you're going to save $300 a month. And it's 12 months out, that's $3,600 you're going to save. Right? That's essentially the cost of the refinance. Right. Are you going to be able to guarantee rates being lower than that in the future? Are you going to guarantee that they don't go up? And so a lot of times we're just looking at it like, okay, let's do our best to minimize the cost.
Right.
So let's get your fees to be as low as possible. Yep. And you and I and our company, we're waiving most of our lender fees. If you go back to the same attorney in South Carolina, a lot of times you'll get a discount on some of their fees and the title insurance. And so it becomes relatively inexpensive in order to proceed with a refinance. And so in that situation, a lot of times we're just looking at it as a hedge. Okay, let's take advantage of the dip that we've had. You're getting a point off your rate right now. It doesn't mean that rates aren't going to go down in the future, but what we're noticing is rates will come down and go back up and come down and go back up. So when we're in a good time period to refinance or to lock in a lower rate, take advantage of it. But if we're doing it in a way that minimizes your cost, there's nothing that says you can't do it again in a year if rates go down far enough to be another advantage to you.
Right.
But at the very least, you're protecting yourself from missing out on the opportunity.
That's correct. And I think you've used the word cost a couple of times, and I think it's important that we have prided ourselves on being true, real, and honest in our podcast. There is no such thing as a free refinance, and there is no. I don't believe, or I haven't seen in my experience, there is such thing as a no cost refinance. You can limit your cost to your bank account by rolling cost into the refinance, the loan itself. But I often see that on social media, or clients ask me that question: Is this free? Is it no cost? And the answer is no, it's not free. But there's ways to structure it out in certain situations where we can limit or reduce the cost. But I can't take an attorney fee away to close the loan.
Well, what most people don't realize is that rate and fees work like a seesaw. They're in an inverse relationship.
Yep.
And so, to your point, like there's going to be fees involved. We can pay those fees, but the cost to the client would be a little bit higher rate at that point.
Right.
Which, for the record, makes sense a lot of times. Like I'm having a lot of conversations with people right now. Like let's say you have a $500,000 loan and should I refinance? Well, yeah, you could get your loan down to 5.5, but I could pay your fees at 5.875. Yeah. So what makes the most sense? Do you want the absolute lowest rates? Maybe, maybe not. But if you want a no cost refinance, that's likely going to come with a slightly higher interest rate.
Yep.
And again, I think a lot of times that does make sense because we don't know if rates are going to continue to drop. If they do, let's not charge you a bunch of money now.
Right.
So then it becomes cost prohibitive to take advantage of it in the future. But if you can take advantage of a lower rate, save some money at very little to no cost, then be able to do it again in the future if rates go down, at least you've protected yourself against missing out on the opportunity.
Again, it's the hedge, right?
It's the hedge.
There are strategies that you can put into place. Like I'm having conversations with anybody that we've started or in process on refinances now, where oftentimes loan officers want to sell. Well, you get to skip a mortgage payment. But you could, theoretically. Why not? If your mortgage payment is $2,300, why would we not close, at the end of a month and bring $2,300 to the closing table? Because it's the same as making a mortgage payment that you would be skipping, and lowers the cost that you're rolling into your unpaid principal balance. There's all kinds of strategies there to help with the cost of a refi.
Yeah, again, it comes down to the borrower specific situation. You'll have clients sometimes, or you may be in a situation where skipping a month, or quote skipping a month, will help reset your financial situation. Inflation has been tough on people. I mean, there are people that are homeowners that would benefit from being able to go an entire month without having to make a mortgage payment. They could catch up on other bills. They could do whatever, do a home repair. There's all kinds of things. Right. But if you do that, that cost gets either rolled into your loan at that point. I guess it gets rolled into your loan. So if you owed $300,000 on a mortgage, you're now going to owe $3,000 or $300,500, whatever. Like the number that you could have brought to closing and not skipped the payment gets built into your loan at that point. Correct. So you owe more on
or built into the interest rate, like you were talking about before, if we do an interest rate credit for cost. So there, again, nothing in the world's free.
Yeah,
I've always been told by my grandparents. So it kind of goes to that. So we've kind of talked about that. I know a question that I get oftentimes is what, and you kind of answered this question, but let's make it really simple if we can from our side of things, is what interest rate difference should you start asking questions? Should I refi? Like I get probably 4 or 5 either calls, texts, or emails a day. Does it make sense? For a homeowner, what percentage should it trigger them to start asking the question? Because we normally are proactively calling our clients saying, hey, this is the rate that we want to wait for that makes sense on break even X, Y, and Z. But for those who have not done a mortgage with us, that have, a mortgage out there, what's the simplistic number that they should start asking a question? 0.5%?
Sure. I don't think you would want to refinance if you're going to save 0.25%. I mean, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It's not enough interest reduction to bear the expense of the cost. I think it's a harder question to answer than making it very simple, though, because it depends on how much the mortgage is. A half a point in rate reduction means a lot on $1 million loan.
Right.
A half a point in rate reduction means very little on a $75,000 loan.
Right. I've typically in my time used, if you have a $300,000 unpaid principal balance or higher, you start asking the question at 0.5%. If it's under $300,000 as a unpaid principal balance, you really want to see 3/4 to a full point to have the return on your investment for refi make sense. Now, that's a very simplistic way I've coached some clients to look at it, because it also depends, again, like we talked about earlier, how long you're going to be in the house, what is your reasoning,
How long you're going to be in the
doing
mortgage?
refi.
Like that,
Right. Yeah.
So, do you think rates are going to continue to drop? If so, then the cost of the refinance would be more important than the rate reduction, because if you can get some sort of savings that's meaningful to you and your family, then let's do it at a way that we can minimize the cost, so that if rates do go down again, you can do it again if you decided to. Again, it's a nuanced question. It's a nuanced answer, and it's very client specific. But I think your benchmark of a half a point in rate reduction does make sense to at least start inquiring if you haven't had a conversation yet.
Okay, let's move to a different style of refinance, the cash out. Talk through, or let's talk through some scenarios where the equity positions that a lot of folks have gained over the last 4, 5, 6 years, where it makes sense to start exploring using equity for other things. You know, home improvements are a big one that we see. Wanting to add square footage to a house, or redo kitchen or bathrooms, things that are going to add value or increase equity. Oftentimes, if you are wanting or have the desire to do those things, taking equity out makes sense in that, because you're adding to the value of the property while you're doing that. What are some other things you see?
And the two things that I see overwhelmingly more than anything else when I'm having cash out refinance or home equity line type conversations is, excuse me, like you said, home improvement or debt consolidation. Like, those are the two things. Like, since COVID and the high inflation period that we've been in or seen, I've seen a lot of clients have a significant increase in unsecured debt. So credit card debt nationally is at an all-time high, over $1 trillion.
Never been higher.
Never been higher. And so a lot of people are not willing to sacrifice their lifestyle, and so they get into debt by doing so, right? I mean, if you go to the grocery store, you used to be able to spend $100, now you're spending $200, or whatever the number is for your family. But costs have increased significantly, and lifestyles haven't diminished as a result. So if people's incomes aren't increasing, they're getting into debt. I can't tell you, I've seen such a trend recently with $1,000 plus car payments. Like, cars are expensive. You can go buy a GM, whatever, Yukon, and you're going to spend 80 grand. If you're going to buy the Denali, you're spending 100. It's like you're spending $100,000 on a car. 25, 30 years ago, you were buying houses for 100 grand. Now you're buying cars.
Yep.
Right? Pat talked about that earlier.
Yep, absolutely.
And so we're seeing a lot of people that have been unwilling to sacrifice lifestyle and have increased debt, but they have this big pot of equity in their house that it doesn't do them any good unless they utilize it for some purpose. Usually that's when you sell the house, you'll get a big chunk. You can, whatever, go put down on your next house or whatever. But I'm seeing a lot of people say, okay, even though I've got this 3 or 4% first mortgage, I've got 100 grand in equity in my house, and I've got 80 grand in credit card debt. Can I do something? And the answer is yes. And what ends up happening a lot of times is people are unwilling to give up their low mortgage rate, but unwilling to realize that, or unable to realize that they're paying 25, 30% on 50 grand in credit card debt that they're never going to get out of. And so I think talked about it on one of our episodes earlier. I did a refinance for a client that had a significant amount of equity, paid off a couple of cars that they had financed for their business, and 30, 40 grand in credit card debt. Their monthly payment, like combined monthly payments, decreased by almost $3,000, $2,800 a month. So even if you had a 3% mortgage at that point and you went to a whatever it was at the time, six now, five, whatever, like your mortgage rate is increasing, yes, but you're also able to consolidate however much credit card debt you have, and you're going to end up saving $3,000 a month in that person's situation. Well,
Increasing the cash flow that you can.
How important is your rate at that point? It's not. Like you just saved lots of money by doing that. And so you can get into a conversation, and again, like I've said a bunch of times today, it's going to be very specific to the individual, but it's worth the conversation. And there's other options. I mean, you could look at a home equity line, and we do those. And so there's a lot of people that'll take out a line of credit against the equity in their house, and it's basically like a big credit card for your equity, right? And it's great. It can be great. That is an option. So if you have 25% rates on credit cards or whatever, and you can get a 7 or 8% rate on a home equity line, that is an option to look at as well.
Right. And we're starting to enter into the territory. Like I've got a call scheduled with a client on Monday that we're having a conversation where they used a HELOC to do home improvement. And so they have a first and second, and we're entering into territory with rates where it makes sense to cash out and combine both of those and into one, because they've got, a $3,000 a month payment on the first, a $1,600 payment on the second. Well, if we rolled that in, they're probably going to save $800, $900 cash flow a month. We've already kind of talked about what can we do with $800 to $900 a month being invested the correct way. So there's yes, it's situation dependent, but there are I believe we're in that market that if you own a home, it's time to start having that conversation. How can we use that vehicle, the home, as a wealth building opportunity or a way to start investing in different ways?
I think it's a good conversation that you just brought up that we hadn't talked about, and it might be boring, so we won't get too into depth on it, but let's talk about effective interest rate. So in your client scenario, they've got a whatever they have on their first mortgage, and they've got a probably 8% on their home equity line, right? You combine those two, you get their rate down. The combined interest rate between those two, you can do the math on what. So if you have a 4% first and an 8% second, and the equal loan amounts on both, like you're essentially paying 6% combined interest on that, right? But if you're saved $900 a month in your scenario and applied even a portion of that back to the loan as a principal reduction, your effective interest that you're going to pay on that loan is significantly reduced.
Yeah.
So if you're fine with the cash flow position you're in, but you can save $800 a month, payment wise, and apply some of that back to the mortgage as a principal reduction, you'll pay way less interest over the course of time.
Yeah,
and your effective interest rate gets lower.
Yeah, and there's ways that if I hear often, I don't trust myself to apply that towards the principal. Okay, well, if you've got 25 years left on your first, let's explore doing a 20-year term option or a 15-year term option. And then we can build that automatically into the monthly payment, because obviously in most cases a 15 or 20-year term in a refinance might have a slightly higher monthly payment. In some cases, if you're saving $8, $9, $3,000 going to a 20-year or 15-year term, maybe it only increases the mortgage payment $600, $700, $800, depending on the unpaid principal balance. So you're then twofold paying a appreciating asset off faster, and have the ability to cash flow more than you do already.
And that
So-
doesn't even consider the fact that typically a shorter term mortgage has a lower interest rate
Right.
attached to it. So
Question from listener. With all the uncertainty going on in America today, I want to buy a house, but I'm a little worried about how safe of an investment it still is. Would love y'all's thoughts, Katie.
great question, Katie. My answer to that is, how long are you going to be in the home? Because historically, we've had one period in history where values have declined, and that was
Well, let's preface that in the state of South Carolina. I think that was, I mean, I can't speak for New York or
South Florida. Yeah, fair enough.
California or
If
Miami.
you are in South Carolina, Katie, I think it is a very safe investment if you're going to be in the house for an extended period of time. I don't know that you'll buy a house today and it appreciates 10% tomorrow. I don't think that will be the case.
Right.
But if you are in the house for 4, 5, 6 years or planning on being in the house for that long, then I think that you're going to be relatively safe. And then you've got to compare the numbers between, okay, I've got a mortgage payment, and if I don't buy a house, I'm still going to have a rent payment most likely. So if you're spending a similar amount of money either way, usually I would advise on the side of homeownership.
I agree with that. I agree. Yeah, I think we've taken care of that one. All right. Second question from Daniel. I've heard so many of my friends and people say that the golden age to buy a house was 50 years ago. Many have encouraged me to rent, but I want to buy. Has the golden age of home ownership passed, or is there still room to build wealth from home ownership?
You want to answer that, or do you want me to?
I mean, I'm happy to answer that. I don't think, in my personal opinion, we will ever be out of the golden age to purchase real estate. Real estate is a appreciating asset. Kind of what you said earlier. In the state of South Carolina, we've had 1 year, I think, of depreciation. So it's always a conservative or safe investment. And it's also, in simple terms, it's a savings account that you're paying into every time you make your monthly payment. So I think owning real estate can be a great wealth vehicle if used correctly. The golden age of real estate 50 years ago, my grandparents still believed you got to put 20% down to buy a house. Well, that makes sense sometimes, and it makes sense not to do that sometimes. And so I think it's kind of what we say all the time. It's situation dependent. But if most people ask me, do I buy or rent? I'm going to say buy unless they're going to be there for a short period of time. That's what you just said about our other question. I think the answer is kind of the same.
I don't know how you would define golden age. That's like somebody saying the best time to buy stocks, or the golden age of buying the S&P 500 was 50 years ago.
Yeah.
And if you took that advice, you missed out on, I don't know, lots of money. Yes, the answer to your question specifically is yes. I still think there's time to buy a house and accumulate wealth from it, 100%. Part of the reason is what Travis just mentioned, where the mortgage payment is a forced savings account, because some of your payment every single month is going towards the principal reduction. So even if your house stayed flat in value, you're paying down the mortgage over time. You're going to build equity in that way. And yes, I do believe that homes will appreciate. Like, the population is growing.
Yep.
Demand is increasing. As rates come down, that will happen at a more rapid pace. And so, yes, I think that buying a house could end up being a very good decision. I think 15 years from now, 2041 Daniel would be upset with 2026 Daniel having not purchased a house based on what seems to be old advice.
Yeah, I mean, I still think we're in the golden age. And like I said, like you said, I don't think there's a bad time. I bought my current house 5 years ago, and this won't happen in all markets. Obviously, it's been a unique situation over the past 5 or 6 years, but my personal home's valued at almost 100% of what I paid for it.
100% increase.
Yeah.
So I mean,
that's a no-brainer.
to concur with the advice you're getting, yeah, hindsight being what it is, if you could go back and rewind the clock to 2019, that might have been a better time to buy a house than today.
Yeah.
But that advice is very backward thinking and not forward thinking at all. And I am of the belief that homes will continue to appreciate over time, even if it's not as rapid of a pace as we've seen during COVID. I think values are going up, and I think you will be paying $400,000 for a $300,000 house in 5 or 10 years. So yeah, buy a house today, Daniel, and call me or Travis.
Yep. What else we got?
I think that's it. I think it's a good time to wrap up. I think we covered a lot of ground. I think we could go more in depth on a future episode on more of the nuances of refinancing. We could bring some, actual examples in and talk through numbers, because there's a lot of people that would listen to this that bought a house in the last 2 years and have a upper sixes, sevens rate.
Absolutely.
And may need to have that conversation. So please do feel free to reach out to Travis or I. If you have questions, shoot us a DM, give us a call. We would love to walk through your specific situation with you. And I guess that's it.
Yeah, I think now's the time to at least start having the conversation and getting advice on, does it make sense? So we'd love to help on that, and we'll catch everybody for the next episode, and we'll see you later.